great to hear, man. It's great to hear, but it's sad to hear that it's so difficult to get. It's sad to hear that it's such a complex issue, but it's so simple. I mean, there's a plant, it grows naturally, and it's really good for you. And it's that simple. The end, right?
And it has benefits, and if you regulate it and control it like other products.
Recent studies have shown this is one of the most dangerous plants ever observed.
Well, I love
more
how
dangerous than strychnine.
Well, they always bring in well, that's everyone laughs in the theater when you bring up the popcorn analogy. They're like, if you eat a pound of salt, you'll fucking die, right?
Yeah.
He's like, but if you put a little bit of salt on popcorn, it's actually quite good. Tastes good, right? Like, you can't, yes, people can abuse just about anything.
Yeah, a pound of salt will fucking kill you. You could go buy a pound of salt right now. I mean, any liquor store you go to, you could drink yourself to death quite easily. You just go and just pick up a couple bottles of Jack Daniels and you're off to the races. It's over.
Former nightclub owner, I've seen, there's nothing more destructive than that stuff. Nothing.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Nothing.
It's horrible that that's our sanctioned drug. Like, we would have a totally different culture. And the evidence is coming out of Denver. Denver has the lowest DUI rates they've ever recorded. They have lower rates of assault and murder than they've ever recorded. There's all these crazy numbers that are coming in, and then the tax revenue is off the charts. They're making so much fucking money, they have to give it back to the people.
And sadly, that's the only thing that's probably going to push a lot of other states, right?
That's not sad, though. It's good.
No, it's good. It's good that it's sad, but it's sad that it's... I always get scared when it's the wrong moral reason of why they're doing it, right? Where that's the only reason, and a politician will sell you on, like, well, we want to help the people, but it's really to make their pockets bigger.
Yeah, I mean, it is sad, but that's the nature of the beast. That's like getting angry at a whore that she sucks your dick and now she wants money. Like, what? I thought it was good. You were really moaning.
You probably enjoyed it.
Come on.
Good point.
We're not friends.
Yeah.
They're whores. They're all politicians are whores, man. I mean, that's really what they do. That's their job is to be fake and to get really good at being fake and figure out where the tide is turning. Yeah, lick their finger and put it up and find out where the wind is blowing. That's the exact
thing we have you doing in the culture eye, right? We're gonna go where the wind blows, right? We're gonna go.
That's from my hunting experience. Actually, you put powder in the air when you hunt. You shoot some powder up in the air and it takes you where the wind.
Once we see the wind.
Yeah, like baby shot. It's like these little things. You puff them in the air and it tells you which way the wind's blowing. But I think that what's happening now with information is because the fact that all these studies are out and all these people that are involved in law enforcement have the opportunity to know someone who is benefiting from it, cancer, or whether it's people that have severe epilepsy, whether it's autism. There's so many different possible medical uses that could touch these people. And so they become very skeptical. Yeah. Like one of my good friends, he's a hardcore Republican. He's really silly. Like, he's one of those dudes, like, he tried to tell me Obama was a Muslim. We were at a party. We were at a fucking party.
I laugh at that stuff from Canada. I think that's really hilarious.
Obama's the biggest Muslim in the country. Okay, dude. All right. But this guy, his mom got sick and stage 4 cancer, and the CBD oils helped her tremendously. And now he's become this evangelist for it. I mean, he's still not engaging in it himself. Yeah. But you could benefit from it. It's like all the things that people don't want out of pot are the things that pot are good for. Like this thing about like, I don't want to lose control. Like, you really do want to lose control. You just don't know. Like, your ego has this fucking terrible grip on you, and it's putting you in this very confined way of looking at the world. You have a very confined, narrow gap that you're looking at the world through. And things like marijuana will open that gap up and allow you to consider or reconsider your positions on all these things. And that's one of the most terrifying aspects of it to politicians as well as to law enforcement, because the idea that they've been wrong this whole time and they're going to somehow or another have to justify all the different shit that they've done. It's like once the cat's out of the bag, like it is in Denver, like it is in Washington State, that cat is going to get out of the bag everywhere.
And like you said, the internet is allowed where all those individual personal stories all over the world can be shared in real time. But you have HD on your phone, right? So you can film. Like Jason did that with his son Jaden, where he recorded like how the medication was working, the pharmaceutical, and like in real time. Like, here's what it's doing. He's now having tremors. He's now having this from, so, and then you can put it on the internet where other people can get informed. Like, you couldn't do that years ago, right? It was like an urban myth way down I heard it might work. And
Right.
Even we have a personal clip that's in the DVD extras of the Cult Triad that didn't make it in the film, but it's about Dr. Lester Grinspoon, right? The first Ivy League doctor to start coming out with the real scientific evidence to cannabis, and he all did it on a bet to Carl Sagan. They were best friends, and Carl Sagan used to smoke 3 to 4 joints every day and go work at NASA.
Holla.
And discover, hey, some of the greatest theories to this day.
Yeah.
You've interviewed Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like Carl Sagan is who everybody aspires to. And Lester, this is what's kind of funny about the story, is he went to prove Carl Sagan wrong. He said, he's like, I'm a physician. I'm from Harvard. Like, Carl, that's just going to kill you. And Carl would be like, oh, relax, Lester, have a puff. Like, it's not a big deal. So Lester started looking into the literature and started pulling it from all the different universities, and then realized that he'd been duped. He's like, you could be fucking kidding me. I'm a Harvard professor, and I was telling all these people, and I was completely wrong. So then he wrote his first paper, which Harvard totally tried to back out of, and they didn't want to give him his professorship of Marijuana Reconsidered. And then he wrote Marijuana, the Forbidden Medicine. And then just as fate would have it, his son, Danny, gets diagnosed with leukemia at 11 years old. And he's ashamed of himself at the time that he didn't. He's going through the regular treatment, through the oncologist, going through the chemo and everything. And Danny was getting really sick, and the nausea affected his son more than anything, right? His kid would be terrified for a week in advance of how sick he was going to get. And finally, another physician was like, well, Lester, I read your stuff. Have you tried cannabis? Like the stuff for anti-nausea seems to be amazing, and the science is there. And he was like, well, I don't want to upset Harvard, and Danny's like too young. Oh, God. And then here's the kind of the kicker of the story that's so funny is that they go to the very place that Prohibition's supposed to keep it out of. His mom and Danny just go themselves because they're willing to try it. They've read his paperwork, the manuscript. They go to the local high school, right? And Mrs. Grinspoon and Danny ask their friends. Within 10 minutes, they got the weed, smoked it. And his oncologist said, like, right out thing, he's like, what did you guys do differently with Danny? He came in, took his therapy, left, and actually ate a full 6-inch sandwich, one where usually he was puking for 3 or 4 days, right? He was actually able, and Lester's like, it gave my son an extra 2 years of life because he could battle the nausea and keep some nutrition down. It's those little wins with health that go such a long way when you're in the cancer thing, right? Like if you're able to eat a little bit of food and get a little bit of nutrition, and that little bit of nutrition helps your body to fight back on its own on top of the medication. And that's where people can get caught up on the other side. We're like, it's the cure, it's the cure. Not the cure, right? As we interviewed oncologists, cancer is individual specific, DNA specific, gender specific. So what might work for you might not work for somebody else. But that doesn't mean that if it does work for someone, that shouldn't be a viable option for them to use that.
It's unquestionably a very effective treatment. There's been many, many peer-reviewed studies that show that without a doubt, cannabis has a positive effect on people with cancer. Whether it's helping them sleep, that's another big one. It gives people sleep, which helps your immune system, fight off cancer. And it helps inflammation, which also helps your body
big
fight
one,
off.
A lot of stuff in inflammation.
Yeah, there's just so many factors that it's gross, man. It's gross. It's gross that we're in this position where we actually have to debate this. This is like you and me sitting down talking about the benefits of drinking water. Yeah. I mean, it really is. It's so stupid.
But if you drink too much mineral water,
that water is what these hippie kids are on. They're fucking. Yeah, I just think it's a matter of time, and hopefully we'll see it in our lifetime. I'm still amazed that it's still illegal. I mean, I remember when I was a kid in high school, I used to think it was the dumbest fucking thing ever. I couldn't imagine that it had and I didn't even know the facts of it. I mean, all I knew was that like there was drugs and there was pot, and pot just kind of made you dopey. Yeah. But alcohol was legal, and I remember the first time I ever got drunk. I was at my friend's house, and we were listening to like fucking The Doors and Led Zeppelin and shit, and drinking Jack Daniels, and I was like 14. I just never should have. I threw up in a cab. It was disgusting. Everything about it was completely disgusting. But I remember, like, the next day, like, this horrible hangover, this pounding headache, and thinking, how the fuck is that legal? Like, you could just drink whatever you want. It's not even like they distribute it to you. Like, you know, like, if you go and you say you get Adderall or Oxycontin or some sort of strong prescription drug, it comes in pill form. It says, take 2 pills. they give you a bottle of Jack and they're like, good luck, fuckface.
Yeah.
That's it. You're on your own.
Then they advertise it like it's the sexiest thing ever, right? Like it's beautiful guys that are clean cut and girls that are smoking hot and you're having a drink and everything's perfect. As a former nightclub owner, I can say it hardly ever looks like that. It's messy, sweaty, like it's not. When I see those commercials, I'm like, that's very funny. I was like, you should film in my bar a little bit. It doesn't look like that at all.
I mean, and I'm not anti-alcohol. It just staggers the imagination. Really.
Neither. Well, and here's a point I thought about when we were doing the union, like as a nightclub owner, and it was a interesting self-reflection that came through because I was on the other side of weed. I was very anti when I was younger because I bought into all the bullshit.
As
right?
was I.
And when I owned a nightclub, we started doing the union and you started learning so much. I remember like after interviewing Norm Stamper, the former police chief of Seattle, or Dr. Lester, like my mind would be spinning for 2 weeks. I'm just like, I can't believe this. Like I started looking at everything different. And then here I was, a nightclub owner, serving people booze that they want. And we're supposed to not overserve. But if you find me a bar, I will find you a time when they overserve, right? Like people come up, they're like, I want 6 shots. You're like, well, no, actually, you're only supposed to order 1 per person. So can you get all 6 people to come to the table, please?
The only bar where they don't overserve is at Disneyland.
Yeah, probably that is
for
right.
real. If you go to the Disneyland hotel, they're strict as fuck. Like I tried to order 4 drinks, they wouldn't even give it to me. Like they give you 2 drinks at a time. You're like, what? Like a shot and a beer. That's it. You know, or I don't even know if they have shots. I think they have like mixed drinks.
That makes sense.
But that's Disneyland.
But I'm not surprised. But when at the bar, when we had it, like I thought about like, you know, and you've seen it too. I've heard you talk about like, you know, seen the odd bar fight and stuff. Like when something like that happened, I put it back to if it was in Prohibition days, right? Like a fight happens, a guy gets knocked out really bad. Well, if it was during the days when you weren't supposed to be serving alcohol, I can just imagine what they did with the severely injured guy. They probably just threw him up the street and said, like, call an ambulance so it's not anywhere near us, otherwise we go down.
Right.
Whereas at least now, like, you know, yes, there's problems associated with alcohol. There's almost nothing we're going to do in society that's not going to have some kind of problem or social aspect where we're going to have to adapt and make sure it works perfectly, right?
Well, particularly alcohol. I mean,
yeah. Like
and I'm not anti-alcohol.
And neither am I. I used to serve it. How can I?
Yeah.
Like, I used to sell it and make a profit.
But it is the #1 drug when it comes to, like, social problems, domestic violence. Like, so many different things go wrong when people drink. And it's everywhere. And the idea that somehow or another they've been able to demonize marijuana, which has the complete opposite effect. Show me a group of potheads that are engaged in gang violence. Like they're beating each other up. They're meeting in the fucking park and duking it out. It's not gonna. You're not going to. I mean, show me a bunch of people that are smoking pot that are, you know, running around, getting in pot bar fights. It doesn't. It's the opposite.
It is and it was something that I witnessed organically when I was going through the discovery with the union, like because at that time I owned the bar, right? So I'd see it every weekend. It was like fight, someone drive. And what's crazy about booze, the effect it has on people is sometimes like people will fight their friends.
Oh,
like they'll get drunk and like all of a sudden I'm like, dude, you guys are best friends, and now you're willing to strike him in the face just because you're a little drunk. Like that's crazy. But then we went to Hempfest where there's like 50,000 people smoking weed.
No fights.
It's like nothing. Everybody's like, you bump into someone, they're like, terribly sorry, man. And like,
sorry,
like,
dude. Sorry.
Like, I'm like, wow. I remember pointing that out, being like, I can't believe there isn't like, because we had a room full of 200, our capacity was only 235. And I mean, there's fights all the time.
Well, imagine if you had like 50,000 people at Tequila Fest. You imagine what kind of a disaster.
That's the start of the zombie apocalypse right there.
Yeah, it would be like just a patch of people eating each other. It's a fucking horrible drug. But again, I support it. I just keep thinking that we're in the transitionary age. We're in the age where people are finally getting it. And that what's happened in Seattle and Colorado and Washington, D.C. is the first blip of this new movement that's going to spread across the country. And the politicians are going to have to adapt because politicians are whores, and that is the good thing about them.
Yep.
Their ideology is based entirely on which way the wind's blowing. So because of that, it's kind of cool.
It's a business, right? Their prime objective is to win and get elected. Because not only them, but all the people that worked with them campaigning for the last year, they lose their jobs too, right?
But you get that Chris Christie fucker. Did you see that guy? He's still saying that marijuana is dangerous and addictive. Meanwhile, he's just ridiculously obese. They just did a study.
I think it's so accurate.
He's so disgusting. They just did a report. Rather, they said he spent $82,000 in food at NFL games of taxpayers' money.
Are you kidding me?
No.
I did not see that.
$82,000 in food at NFL games.
Wow.
And this fucking guy, who is morbidly obese, just overflowing out of his shirts and his pants. Just
clear food addiction and eating addiction. 100%, like, clearly.
100%. And by the way, I had this guy, Dr. Dan Engledy, on the other day, who was talking about he works with people with addictions and trying to treat these addictions. Like, food addictions and sugar addictions in particular are one of the most difficult ones to treat because you've got to eat. Everybody eats. It's not like heroin. Like, you can kick heroin and no one's like, dude, you got to do a little heroin. You got to stay alive. Like, you don't have to do a little heroin.
Jamie and I were talking about this before you arrived, and processed sugar was artificially put into a majority of our foods, like back in the 70s and 80s, so that you have a taste for it. That's why we're so addicted to like it's in things you don't even think about. Spaghetti sauce, sandwich meats, things like that. So you look, you're like, there's sugar in this? Like, it's
corn
in everything.
Syrup.